Tom, there's an awful lot to chew on this afternoon, but let me ask you what I've asked our listeners now with respect to Justin Trudeau, his time as Prime Minister coming to an end, and looking back, your takeaway from his 10 years as Prime Minister.
Well, doing a bit of a balance sheet, I'd say on the asset side, on the plus side, he established a new and very admirable relationship with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. He settled long-standing claims. The federal treasury paid out tens of billions of dollars, as they had to, on those claims. And I think that no one could have predicted that he would follow through quite as well. One failing there was with regard to drinking water on reserves. He'd said get it done in the first mandate. It still isn't done. So that was a bit of a problem. But overall, I think he deserves credit for that. I always will say, and I'll argue this with anybody, because I know some of my conservative friends go bonkers when I say that Trudeau did a very good job dealing with the pandemic. I think the COVID-19 pandemic was unprecedented. I think that they rolled out the money very quickly with as few strings attached as possible so that the millions of Canadians who found themselves without a job overnight were taken care of. And did some of the money get spent unwisely? Perhaps. But I think that overall, Canada has a very good record on that. The negative side, frankly, has one flashing neon light, and it says economy. So despite what I just said about spending and the pandemic, before the pandemic hit, Trudeau had already blown a $100 billion hole in the budget. He had overspent to the tune of $100 billion, had nothing to show for it, Aaron. So I think that the one area where he completely fell down is on the economy generally. And I would say specifically, not just his handling of the money, but how he increased the size of the federal civil service by 40%. It actually became less efficient with that many new people. And last year, to give you an example, they gave $17 billion in contracts to outside companies. So overall, it's his handling of the government and the economy. That's his weak side. On certain specific things like First Nations and the pandemic, I give him top marks.
So let me fast forward, if I can, to next week, whatever date happens to be, where we have a new Liberal leader, where we have a new Prime Minister, in essence. What happens to Justin Trudeau? Because the question is being asked right now, does he immediately have to step down? Can he decide when he wants to step down? Who makes that determination? What do you understand it to be?
He's made a mess of this. He should have had a very clear answer ready. And his leaving of office has been excellent. He's given great speeches. He's shown leadership and strength in dealing with Trump. I get the impression that there's just a lot less pressure on his shoulders, and he's a lot looser, and he's been handling Trump extremely well, I believe. But the deal is with Canadians, and Mark Carney's score in this, the surveys say that if Mark Carney's the leader of the Liberals, they're going to make this into a dogfight with the Conservatives. It'll be a closer race. That's all predicated on Trudeau leaving. Now, understandably, he's hesitant. He doesn't want to give the date. Maybe he's trying to cover up a secret they've come up with. They have a plan for a couple of steps. But he's twice now, once on television earlier in the week and once yesterday, has talked about staying around for days or weeks. That makes no sense. The constitutional premise is the party with the largest number of seats forms the government, and the person who heads that party is the head of government, the Prime Minister. So there's no way around that. Trudeau doesn't get to decide that he's staying around for weeks. It makes no sense for him to have even said that. And I just hope that this is going to be done cleanly. We do have a lot of instability and insecurity right now in the country. People are feeling it. I don't know about you, Aaron, if people just come up and talk to you about it. Happens to me like literally all the time now. Like people just have nothing else on their minds. And so I think that Mr. Trudeau owes it to himself, to the country, to the Constitution, and to the future to step aside gracefully pretty well immediately. Like I'd say 1 or 2 days max. Okay, give it a day to get it set up at Rideau Hall, have a nice event on the Tuesday or something like that. Anything beyond that, it's unseemly and borderline unconstitutional.
So let me ask the question that someone has brought this up as well. Given that he's been the point person, obviously, on all these negotiations with Donald Trump, and he's scoring very well with Canadians for the way he's standing up, is there the possibility, at all, that despite the fact he will no longer be the leader of that party, he is asked to stay on in some capacity to deal with this, or is that not even in the cards, do you think?
Oh, if I were in Mark Carney's shoes, I'm assuming that he's going to take it on Sunday, but that's they haven't counted the votes yet, so that's not a given. But let's assume that all the information that we have is right and that Carney wins it. Then Carney gets sworn in. He has to swear in a new cabinet. And it's going to be difficult for him because the last thing he wants to do is hold on to all the deadwood from the Trudeau years, because the Conservatives will just point to that pile of deadwood and say, you see, it's the same crew. And bringing Trudeau in a role that has specifically to do with dealing with Trump, I think that would be an elegant move if Trudeau wants to do it. Mm-hmm. In most cases, you'll see the former leader just step aside. So Trudeau could take his own time, take the rest of the spring, just decide not to run in the next election, maybe show up for one last speech in the House, something like that. But I think that overall, this is the end of the Trudeau era. And I think that you're quite right. And people are right to say that he's been doing a very good job handling Trump. I even heard through the grapevine that there were a fair number of swear words used during their 50-minute conversation. So good on him.
So Tom,
I think he was channeling the anger of a lot of Canadians there.
Let me go back to another story today. I'm finding this out now. The Toronto Star reporting, the Wall Street Journal reporting that during their call, not this call, but a call in February, Donald Trump actually again brought up the idea of this Canada border, which he says is not something that he recognizes now. The one signed in, 1908? And again, he keeps pushing and pushing. First, it was the annexation. He's not given up on that idea, or at least he continues to talk about it. But then this idea of, as I said, the border that demarcates, the U.S. and Canada. He's brought up, apparently, the idea of our lakes and rivers and agreements we have signed between, our two nations. What's going on here, do you think?
Well, Trump is a muddled individual. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. He's full of bluster and BS. He's like a carnival barker, just trying to con people. And that's the way he's always operated. It's the same guy. And he's not going to change his technique. He doesn't read anything. He doesn't know anything. So for him to just mumble on, I've heard him say that, this artificial boundary between Canada and the United States. I heard him, I counted 5 times during the election campaign, because it's something, because of my former role as an environment minister, I pay attention to, is bulk water exports. And he said, well, there's lots of water up in Canada that we can bring down to the parched Southwest. Yes, wise people will mention that the Americans have just about half the Great Lakes, but what he wants is water in the West. He thinks that, he can just bring that down and help Los Angeles, to give an example. So this is pure Trump, and he does have his eye on critical minerals and on water and so forth. He's going to try to bully and bluster. The 250% tariff, by the way, on our dairy is something that he agreed to. He signed on it. So we have something called a supply management system. We don't want too much coming in. The amounts that were agreed to, there was a breach in the agreement. That was much better this time around for the states than the last time. But we still have a protectionist system that is in the agreement that Trump signed. He accepted it. He agreed with it, and now he says he no longer agrees with it, and he's going to go after it. I think he's just trying to, frankly, nurse his bruises after having had to walk away from all his nonsense about the tariffs he was going to bring at 25% on Canada and Mexico. So he's walked away from that. He's going to have to go back to the U.S.-Mexico-Canada deal. He keeps talking, about the fact that he wants reciprocity. Reciprocity for Canada is easy peasy because our reciprocity is already in the deal. We've already agreed who can ask for what. He can't change that deal, but he can renegotiate it. But what's his word worth? Why would we spend 1 minute renegotiating anything with Donald Trump? He doesn't respect his own signature.
But in the case of, and I'm not sure how this works, and you can explain this, in the case of supply management, take dairy, for example. If we are charging them that 250%,
we are.
And he's saying, well, that's not fair. We should do the same. People look at that and go, well, that seems fair.
And it does. And then the question is, well, who's the idiot who signed the deal? Oh, that was you, Donald Trump. The reason you signed the deal is because that's what you got. That's what you negotiated. You actually were able to get Canada to drop some of its supply management system, and you were able to get a little bit of a breach. You were able to get in there a little bit more. Maybe you can get more of it next time, but you can't do it unilaterally because we have this document called a treaty that you signed. And it wasn't signed by Joe Biden, who Trump, of course, said was the worst president in U.S. history. I'll let you guess. He also said he knew, because he had studied it, who the best president in U.S. history was. Did you listen to that part of his speech this week?
Did, but it was very close between him and George Washington, Tom.
He said George, no, you weren't paying. Aaron, you lose half a point.
I'm sorry.
He said George Washington was second. That
My bad.
Donald Trump was the best.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, you're still going to get an A, but you just lost your A plus.
Okay. But let me ask this other question too, because and I know we've talked about this before. One of the other threats now is to basically pull Canada out of the Five Eye Agreement, right, between Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and the U.S. That's intelligence sharing. That's serious.
It is, and Canada deserves it because we've been awful partners in the Five Eyes. We refused to boot Huawei out of Canada when everybody else had done it. Huawei is the Chinese company putting in these 5G networks. And no, this isn't a conspiracy theory about 5G networks. It's about the Chinese government having access to everything that goes on here in Canada because it would be their network. And it made no sense that we held on for so long, but that's what Trudeau decided to do. So we have not been reliable partners on that, and that can change rapidly. But, that's not an empty threat. But at the same time, if we're unreliable, then what are we doing inside that mountain in Colorado, where you've got NORAD headquarters, where we have access to the most important secrets, which is what we're watching in the sky and protecting all of North America. So, again, there's a bit of pushback on Canada's past behavior, and frankly, I don't disagree. We totally deserve it. It's like our total, abject, inexcusable failure to live up to our own promise. Now, I keep saying when Trump signs something and breaks his promise, we promised to have 2% of GDP in defense spending. We're nowhere near it. We're one of the worst in NATO, and we have no excuse for it.
Last thing I would ask you, do you agree with the tack that has been taken up until now? I don't know if you saw Melanie Joly on with Christiane Amanpour the other night on CNN. This pushback, is this something you think we're doing right?
Well, she went quite far on one thing this week, but she was absolutely right to do it. What Melanie Joly said was the card that we were keeping closest to our vest was the card of tacking on a massive tariff on oil and gas exports. Because Trump has the temerity to say that the exports of oil from Canada to the United States are a subsidy by the United States towards Canada, which is absolute. It's the epitome of the madness of King Trump. Because what actually happens is Canada's subsidizing the United States with this because we're selling that oil really cheap, much cheaper than what you would pay for it in Europe or anywhere else, simply because it's landlocked. Except for the new pipeline, the bigger one that's finally there to the West Coast, there's nothing to the East Coast, and it has to go down to the Gulf of America.
Yeah, right.
I almost said Gulf of Mexico, but that doesn't exist anymore, of course.
Everywhere except one place. Tom Mulcair. Tom, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Talk to you soon.